Welcome to part 2 of Summer Camp, Campus Confidential Summer Camp. Loren, tell us about this one.
Yeah, this one, it was really about when so much is changing, what can keep us positive and what is the stuff, how do you identify the stuff that shouldn't change and let go of everything else for your own mental health? The other thing that really came out of this is how do we optimize our organizational structures and systems to be resilient when everything is crazy around us as is going on right now?
Let's take a listen.
There's so much going on that I feel like I need to either take a stand or fight against. But that's nice in theory, but on a day-to-day basis, what are actually those steps that you can do, locally, regionally, physically, monetarily, right?
Yeah.
All the choices. And there's a lot of choices. And I think it's easy to get to a place of well, is that going to be enough?
Right.
Does it, it's a drop in the bucket kind of thing. Does it matter? And it does. It should. All those drops add up. I know that in the left side of my brain. But it's hard.
I think people working in higher education, honestly, are already doing enough. I'll say that. I mean, people that are in higher education that are helping others with this very thing are already doing enough. There's a part of me, I'm not on campus anymore, so there's a part of me feeling like I need to do more. But those who are serving others, who are dealing with, are probably doing more than the average person, if that's important to you. So there's a little bit of take solace in that, I think, too. But I'm trying to avoid becoming cynical. When I wrote my dissertation was on political cynicism. And I was trying to understand the sources of college student political cynicism. Why are they cynical? It's so important they get engaged. And I've become a little bit of my subject. And I'm trying to avoid that. Will it really make a difference kind of feeling? But I think, I guess I feel like people that are in higher education or serving those in higher education and in many ways, like you and your members, Pam, are doing quite a bit when you really sort of net it out against the average.
I guess I was asked Jeremiah and Doretta, since you're on campuses, do you feel like you're doing enough? Do you feel like it's, what is your sense?
I think that, I was thinking back to commencement day and, if ever there's a day to be optimistic, it's commencement day. It's such a magical time. And I feel like on a college campus, there's a lot that's happening in the world, but overwhelmingly, I feel positive because I get to see college students. I get to talk with college students. I get to interact with them, and they're doing amazing things. They're so much smarter than I was when I was in college. And so I really, being here, I really do get the sense that, the world is in good hands. The next generation is, they're really insightful. They care deeply about creating a better future, and so I've got some optimism about the folks that are going to take the mantle in the future. So I sort of I understand all the reasons why people might feel a range of things at the moment, but my work on a college campus leaves me feeling optimistic about what's possible.
That's interesting. I guess, and it may just, kind of depend on where we are and what the state of our operations are. But I actually feel a little helpless. I don't know what to do, what I can do, how I can make a difference. And I'm, putting my efforts and things toward justifying replacing mail clerks in the mailroom, with these justifications of why these positions are needed, because the mail's not getting distributed. So that's where my effort and my energy is going. And that's not making a difference. That's just trying to stay afloat. So I don't know what energy and effort I have where I could make a difference if I didn't have to work so hard to just keep the operation moving because of all of the changes and things that are happening, the financial austerity measures that we're taking, and things that really would probably be better for our operations if they had some kind of built-in guidelines that says it's one thing to replace a vacant mail clerk. It's one thing to add 5 new positions. Why do they all have to be under the same criteria? That is, that's a big struggle for me. And so I do feel kind of helpless right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I always think about the difference between equal and equitable. I think my experience has been, especially in some spaces of processes in higher ed, it's like, well, we just have to make them equal so we can implement them versus equitable, right? And how do we do it's a little harder to do the equitable work than just standardizing everything. And so how do you get space? I would also argue and maybe remind you, like, filling a mail clerk is very important.
It's still serving.
Yeah, I think sometimes we feel so disconnected from like the student in the moment. And how do we, I don't know, stay connected in the bigger? It's hard. It's really hard.
And I'm thinking of Jeremiah's point. I too loved the rituals when I was on campus, the rituals of move-in and commencement and the rituals that would fall in between midnight breakfast, which I never wanted to go to. And I was always so glad I did, all those little things that remind you of the humanity of the place. And what I'm wondering is, not wondering, I guess I'll declare a little bit how important that is, particularly in these times, maybe even beyond work, right? So what are the rituals of your life that you need to build in so that reminder, that optimism that we need as leaders can be instilled and reinforced and cultivated, just like we have become accustomed to. It comes every year. These little rituals on campus come every year, and they're wonderful. And I totally agree. Those are the things that I just loved, Jeremiah. And I was always optimistic as a consequence. What are the things in life, given the pressures that people feel, that might be the rituals? I wonder. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. How do we find those as people, as citizens, as family members, et cetera?
I think
Are you asking if anyone has any? Oh, good.
I don't
Jeremiah.
know. I said it was a declaration, so maybe I wasn't.
No, Jeremiah, I interrupted you. Say.
Well, I think that makes me. This probably isn't a direct answer to your question, but I think that I think it's easy to get into a deficit mindset sometimes about what we don't have or what we can't do or what's lost when. The conversation we've been having on campus is at this moment in time, the world is changing, higher education is changing. There are lots of things changing around us, and it feels like a lot, and it feels fast in some ways. But I think that we get to care deeply about students. We get to do everything we can to help students get from first to second year and from second year to graduation. We get to we get to celebrate our educational mission. We get to prepare students for the workforce, for families, for graduate school, for all sorts of things. And so, when you really get down to what we have ahead of us, what we have ahead of us is amazing work. I know that, again, there are a range of feelings about everything that's happening, but at the end of the day, there's so much that we get to do and so much that we get to be optimistic about. And that's to say nothing of the real challenges that we face for a number of reasons. I acknowledge that those exist, and also these reasons for optimism and these moments that remind us why we do the work, they exist as well in parallel. And so I think that sometimes I think we have to be mindful of where we place that weight. because we can, sometimes when things change, we can focus on that rather than the things that stay the same or the opportunities that we have. And so that's not meant to be Pollyanna. It's just meant to sort of reframe that, hey, we've got a lot of great work ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I was at a conference earlier this week, and there was a panel. I'm going to keep this generic. There was a panel on innovation, right, in the future of, and 3 people I completely respect and talking. And as I'm listening to them talk, I'm like, gosh, as much as things changing, it's like some of the topics are the same topics from 15 years ago. I'm like, whoa, I think this panel could have been from 2010 in some ways. And then there's like, you're peppering the new things, the AI or that's always new right now. And then the slang. I don't know if you call it slang, but just the way students talk these days, right? Like, went through the Urban Dictionary of words that
panel was so mid.
That's right. They weren't sus, I guess, right? But I think it's that interesting to me is how everything feels like it's changing so much, yet there's this underlying tradition or tone of higher ed that is there's stability. So how do you leverage the stability, embrace the change, and think about where the future is going? Feels like that's the moment in time that we're in.
My question might be, as you were at that panel, is the right stuff staying the same? Because stuff got to change. Mm-hmm. Is the right stuff. And I'm wondering too, what Jeremiah was getting at. Well, I wonder if an interesting mnemonic device is sort of, as we're freaking out or people are freaking out about what's changing in life or in careers, to say, yep, but what's the same? It might be an interesting question, but what's the same, to see if we can pull it back to, okay, well, those things matter and those are the same. And then are those the right same things?
I don't have an answer for this, but I've been thinking a lot about, I read an article and they were talking about, we're not trying to like optimize our systems, our, organizations for like recovery or, getting to some other side, like maybe we thought about in the last recession or getting through a pandemic. We really should be focused on optimizing our systems for flexibility and resilience, because the change will keep coming, right? So kind of to your point, Loren, how do we stop thinking about the exact things of today, the A and the B and the C, but really have a mindset and even have systems and structures that flex through time, no matter what the drivers of change are. So like, this sounds really good to me. I've not figured out how to do it, right? But I don't think we're optimizing for some recovery here, right? And we've been through evolution in the past. And I really like your question around what are the right things to say that stay the same and what are the right things to change, because there are things that need to change. Mm-hmm. And I too am really hopeful about this generation. Now I'm biased because those are my children, right? They're college age right now, but and I adore my children. But they care deeply and they're curious and they have access to all kinds of information and they're more activists, I think, than maybe some of their older peers. Unfortunately, I think that comes from a negative lived experience, but nonetheless, like they want to change the world and they have tools and structures to do that, with or without us. Right. And so what I watch, you get rid of the narrative in the media about higher ed, but what it seems to me on campus by campus, campuses are still really supporting that learning, that development, arming them with those tools to make change in the ways that they want to make change, to design careers in the ways that they want to design careers. And it's a little sad to me that is not represented in a lot of sort of the national narrative, if you will, about higher ed, but it's absolutely going on every campus I visit. You both described it on your campuses. So there is a lot of hope in there too. But Yeah, this idea of like resilience and flexible systems, and higher ed isn't necessarily built that way, and it probably shouldn't be. It is a unique industry, and it's unique for some good reasons, and that its uniqueness serves some good purposes. But there is some flexibility, I think, that needs to shift a little bit. So what does that look like? This is where I think about community colleges a lot, because I think community colleges, like systemically, flex. They're set up to flex faster.
Yeah, I think you're right, Pam. I think when you said there doesn't seem to be a stasis that we're going back to. I mean, and I think that we're at a time for all sorts of reasons where, everybody you meet is out of their comfort zone in some way. And that's bound to feel like it's fraught with conflict, but I think that it's also what spurs creativity. It's also what spurs innovation. It's, so when we always talk about getting out of our comfort zones, and here we all are. And so
thrown out of them. There's no
so I think that it's a tremendous opportunity, while we're out of our comfort zones, how do we move things forward? How do we get creative? How do we think differently about addressing problems and moving things forward? So I think, again, it's all about framing. It's challenging for everybody to be out of their comfort zone at once. And also there's a huge opportunity there.
So right. I would agree. Everyone's out of their comfort zone, or we're all figuring it out. It almost feels like, I think there was some people said it, some people didn't, but it was like there was going back after COVID. And I think now, how many years later, 3 to 5 years later, there's no going back. I feel like it's that song, right? There's no going back. So where are we headed? So how are you all thinking about centering yourself as you're part of that lived experience while you're moving other people through it?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to think about, this feels weird to say, but there was some upside during COVID, right? Like, we made decisions faster, right? We tried things we never conceived we could try. So I try to hang on to some of that mindset and encourage my staff to be in that mindset, encourage the board leaders that I get to work with to be in that mindset. I mean, I think that's a good thing to hang on to. And then I really like this idea around rituals, right? And what are those grounding rituals? 'Cause I think, whether that's as a staff, and you're causing me to think, because we're all remote now. So we had all these rituals that were tied to in-person. And then we had a set of rituals in the first couple of years of COVID when we were all remote, but those have kind of petered out. And so we need to bring back some rituals. So I don't know. That's what came to mind for me.
There was this conversation around during COVID that those who thought it was, there were some who thought it was an interruption. We will return to our previous channel when this thing ends. And those who viewed it as a disruption. It's possible, let me even assert that those who dealt well with it as a disruption are probably going to deal well with what we're experiencing now. That we're not returning to both of your points, to some previous state. The new state has to be figured out. And maybe that's where the pandemic is a real opportunity maybe we need to audit our experience to understand what we learned and therefore apply to this next era.
Mm-hmm. And I do think it's systemic change. I mean, we're not playing around at the edges. This isn't programmatic stuff or, playing around at the edges of finance. Like, there's systemic change that needs to happen for, I think, higher ed associations and, I would imagine on campus too.